And I wanted to highlight this article, which is actually wrong, but it's wrong in an interesting way.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Because have I piqued your interest?
You have.
Okay, so this is from antiwar.com, which antiwar.com does a lot of great work, and they're definitely anti-war, which not many places are. Why is that funny?
But most places called antiwar.com are usually anti-war.
Or they're like, I don't know, Democrats, and they're like, we're anti-war, except when all of the times. Anyway, they're definitely anti-war. They're definitely anti-imperialist. It just so happens that this article doesn't understand something very important. And I think we clarifying that would also go to show what the fuck Biden's doing right now. So it says Biden's push for a bizarre bad deal with Saudi Arabia continues. And they talk about this deal he's pushing with Saudi Arabia, and he seems frantic to get it done. And the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal both published big stories about it today. This is yesterday, 2 days ago. The reports agree that on the general outline of the deal that the administration has in mind. As expected, it would involve significant U.S. commitments to the Saudis in security guarantees and support for their nuclear program. In exchange, the Saudis are supposed to commit to limiting their relationship with China. Remember that part. But it is hard to see how the U.S. could enforce that part. In theory, there would also be Israeli concessions to Palestinians, right? But since we know, right? But since we know that this part is never happening, I'm not sure why anyone is bothering to mention it. It looks very much like the horrible deal that many of us have been expecting and criticizing for several months is being pushed. And he goes on to be like, basically saying, I don't understand why the Biden administration is so desperate to get this done. It's unenforceable. Is it just because they don't really like seeing Saudi Arabia work with China? And what they don't say, what they clearly don't understand is there is a very obvious reason as to why Biden and the administration, the U.S. government are frantic to get this deal done. Because the petrodollar, the entire power of the U.S. empire is rests on top of the petrodollar, which, yes, we're also the world's reserve currency. But why are we the reserve currency? Because of the petrodollar. So petrodollar has half of the word has something in it. Petroleum, oil. Oil has to keep running. It has to keep running in a big way, and it has to keep running basically from Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has to keep paying for it and selling it in dollars. That is all of the U.S. power rests on top of that. We can print all the money we want because of that. And recently, Saudi Arabia has been showing that they're hedging away from this. They have been showing that they're willing to stand up to the United States. They're showing that they're working with China, that they've even started to do oil deals with China in yuan and not in dollars.
The trade in dollars has decreased significantly. And yes, people will still be trading in dollars. Like, it's not going to end tomorrow. Even with the BRICS summit coming up, we're not going to see, the whole world just extract itself from trading in the dollar. But this is a big deal, what's been happening so far, and the sort of the multipolar world that is emerging from the decline of the U.S. empire. And the U.S. does not want that to happen, but kind of can't fucking do anything about it, because the only like Chris Hedges said that the only language that the U.S. empire knows how to speak in is violence. But there's nothing that you can't beat someone out of your own decline. Like, it's just happening. And the more that the U.S. tries to force, half of our military budget is just about China. Like, the more that the US tries to force countries like China or Russia to stay down, Russia is like the most sanctioned country in the world right now and is really just doing fine.
I think the ruble is stronger than it was before.
Yeah. Like, the US can't violently suppress these countries anymore. And the suppression is not only not hurting these nations the way they want it to, but it's actually hurting the U.S. more. So, like, these sanctions that the U.S. has against China, for instance, hurts our economy, like, a lot.
Well, yes, but long term, they're trying, like you're saying, they're trying to secure global hegemony, U.S. ownership of the world. by forcing these countries down to not do BRICS, to not have other currencies become powerful. And so long term, it actually will harm our economy, but the US empire needs to decrease. We need degrowth. We need to not own the world because look what we've fucking done to it. And so I wanted to point out that this is why the Biden administration, the U.S. government, let's face it, Biden's not making these decisions. So the fucking
Dude, I don't even think he decides what to wear.
The 50-year-olds he's surrounded with, they make these decisions, and they are frantic to get Saudi Arabia to stop cooperating with China. And that is what this deal is about. And so, just to conclude here, antiwar.com writes, it's a high-risk, no-reward proposition that sets Biden up for a bruising fight. No reward. In the view of the U.S. government, the U.S. empire, this is the ultimate reward, or to stop the dwindling of the petrodollar. And what does this have to do with climate crisis? Obviously, the climate crisis is going to run unfettered, unstopped, unhinged, unless we stop. Unless the petrodollar, the thing with petro in the name, stops ruling the world. That has to fucking happen for us to have a sustainable world. And no one is really talking about it in these terms. It's unbelievable how little this gets talked about. Even antiwar.com doesn't get it, apparently. So,
well, if you're watching this, antiwar.com, please. I know a guy who would be happy.
I know a guy
to share some insight into the petrodollar.
I would be happy to yell at you for a little while.